In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 brutally honest journal prompts that if you take seriously, if you actually get into your journal and give yourself the set and setting, set would be the right mindset, like you're actually open, you have an openness to new ideas and openness to inspiration, but also if you're in the right setting, meaning you're in a quiet, flow-based environment. There's a lot of research that shows that obviously the type of environment you're going to be in is going to influence the type of ideas, the type of insights that you're going to get. And so you would want a sacred environment, a quiet environment. For me, honestly, it's very simple. It's my car. I get into my car, I do meditation and prayer, and I get myself into the right set and setting with no distractions so that I can open myself up to subconscious breakthroughs and spiritual breakthroughs. This video, I'm just going to share my screen. I'm going to walk you through, firstly, a poem that is mind-blowing, that's going to make you look at your 2023, your next 12 months differently. But then I'm going to walk you through the 5 journal prompts, which I invite you to take some time to go through these. If you go through these, they will radically adjust your view of your future, your view of your past, and also your present, where you're focused, where you're playing small. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. I'm going to share with you that poem, and then I'm going to walk you through the 5 journal prompts, which obviously you can come back to this video, you can pause it, you can save these for some other time when you can get yourself into the right set and setting. I challenge you to give yourself 20 to 60 minutes on these questions. This is one of the things that very few people do in our ever distracted world, is they don't give themselves the space to just think, to reflect, to open themselves up. And if you do that, it expands your consciousness. It helps you to see the forest for the trees. It helps you to see where you're climbing the ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. It helps you to re-strategize. It helps you to get open to inspiration ideas. It helps you to get open to subconscious breakthroughs. Because people are so plugged in, so distracted, so addicted to short-term dopamine, they're on the hamster wheel. They're on autopilot, and they're not actually becoming more conscious, and their lives are going very quickly. And so the first journaling question I'm going to ask you is going to be very, very brutally honest, very powerful. And by the way, I asked myself these questions in my journal today, particularly the first one that I'm about to show you. And it helped me realize that even though I've had a very productive and prolific last 5 years, if I actually looked at it brutally honestly, I could easily achieve more in just the next 12 months and grow more and expand more and realize more in the next 12 months easily than I did in the last 5 years. So let me go ahead and share my screen and show you this poem. This is a poem from a woman named Jessie Rittenhouse, and this was written over 100 years ago. I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. Life is a just employer. He gives you what you ask. But once you have set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn dismayed that any wage I had asked of life, life would have willingly paid. Ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find. What you focus on expands. The concept is pretty easy in psychology. It's called selective attention. Just whatever you're focused on, you're creating more of. And so this poem sets the stage for, what are you asking of life? What are you seeing for your life? What are you most committed to? As human beings, we are all committed to something. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the 5 brutally honest journal prompts. The first one is, what are you asking of life right now? What is the vision you have for your future self? What is the vision and commitment you have for the next 12 months? How would your strategy change if you asked 10x more, bigger, and better for the next 12 months? This hits the concept of future self. It hits the concept of what psychologists call prospection or expectation effect. It also hits the concept of commitment and identity, that your identity is whatever you're committed to as a person. And right now you are fully committed to something in life. You've already committed and you already have an expectation. Actually, there's a really great book on this subject. It's called The 3 Laws of Performance. And basically what the researchers show in that book is that we all have a default future in our mind. This is not the future we hope for. It's not the future that we necessarily want. It's the future that we've already deemed would happen. And you already have a default future, not only for the next 12 months, but for the rest of your life. And this is the future that you fully already have accepted and believe will happen. It may not be the future that you want to happen. So the first question to just simply ask in your journal is, what are you asking of life? What do you fully expect? What are you fully committed to? And what would happen if you asked more of the next 12 months? What would happen if you asked for 10x bigger or more or better, something much better? You can change your whole life in 12 months. You could even change your whole life in a single month if you reframed what you wanted, if you reframed what you were committed to, if you let go of some of the things that aren't worth the time anymore. Maybe they got you here, but they won't get you there. And so the big question is, what are you asking of life? What are you asking of 2023? What are you asking of the next 12 months? And what would happen if you asked for enormously more and bigger? how would that change how you approach anything? Whatever you're most committed to in terms of your future self, that's what's going to drive your present. There's a lot of research that shows this, that your present is fully influenced by the future you most see and are most committed to. This is why hope and high expectation are obviously very powerful. And if you have an optimistic view of the future that you're heavily committed to, that's going to ultimately change your strategy. When the why is strong enough, you will find the how. Psychologists call this pathways thinking. They also call this psychological flexibility, that once you get heavily committed to something, you're willing to adjust, iterate, learn, adapt, and ultimately find and create new pathways and strategies. Also, the commitment you have for the future, necessity is the mother of invention. If you're asking much more of life, and then ultimately life is asking much more of you, you're going to be required to transform a lot more. You're going to be required to innovate more, learn more, adjust more, heal more, let go of more. Question number one, brutal honesty. What are you asking of life right now? And also, what are you asking of your future self? What are you asking of the next 12 months? And what would happen if you asked for 10x more, bigger, or better of the next 12 months? A crazy truth is that having bigger goals necessarily doesn't make them harder. Sometimes it makes them easier because it weeds out, and this will get to a question later on, but it weeds out most of the things that you're doing right now that aren't ultimately helping you and benefiting you. A lot of the things you're doing right now fit in what would be called the 80% of things. So there's the 80-20 principle, that 20% of what you're now doing is creating 80% of more of your results. 20% is where most of the excitement is, whereas 80% of your current life is ultimately a distraction or a security blanket that you're just holding on to for one reason or another, out of habit, out of security. So 80% of your life right now is a distraction. And I'll get into that more in a minute because that's a later question. This next question is the one that hit me very hard when I was reflecting on it in my journal this morning. It would start by asking you, review your most important progress and experiences over the last 5 years. So I would invite you to go back all the way to call it early 2018 and to review the highlights, review where you actually made tangible, powerful progress. And this is where you're just really honest. What were the most important forms of progress you made? What were the most important experiences? The most important things you did over the last 5 years? And once you've made that list and you've quantified it, you've qualified it, you've looked at it. For me, as an example, I've had a huge 5 years. We adopted 3 kids. We had 3 more. So we basically, in early 2018, we adopted our 3 kids that were foster kids. We then had twins that same year. I published my first book that year. And now here we are in 2023. I'm about to publish my 6th and 7th book this year in terms of traditional publishing. And so there's a lot of things that I've done, but if I just literally write it all down on paper, and if I'm honest about what are the most important terms of progress I've made, not only externally, but internally as a person, like in terms of true progress as a person, how am I truly different from my past self 5 years ago? I'm very different. I'm very different from even who I was a year ago in terms of how I think, how I operate, what I do, what matters to me, what I'm striving for. And you are as well. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago. You've done and you've achieved a lot. You've experienced a lot. You've grown a lot. But there was a lot of filler in those 5 years as well. There was a lot of busyness and not productivity. There's a lot of distraction, a lot of holding yourself back. And so, probably at least 80%, right? If you're thinking 80-20 principle, 80% of those last 5 years may have been you playing small, or you on the hamster wheel, or you holding on to grudges, whatever it may have been. And so I want you to quantify and qualify. By qualify, I mean the qualitative value of that progress, like where you evolved, you changed, you grew. And so what did you tangibly experience? What were the most important things in progresses, experiences, and transformation that you experienced in the last 5 years? Once you've actually laid it out on paper, my question is as you're reviewing that, do you think it's possible for you to at least be, do, and have that much in the next 12 months? If you wrote it down, if you looked at it, if you got committed, if you got serious, if you asked more of life, if you expanded your vision, if you expanded your thinking, if you let go of that 80% of distractions, if you let go of the things that are holding you back, if you went into what Greg McKeown would call monk mode, where you essentially disappeared to the world. You stopped being so available to all the distractions or other people's agendas around you, and you actually got hyper committed and focused and spent more time in flow. Redesigned your day, redesigned your life so that you have more focus flow and more recovery flow. You're more on and off. You optimize for better sleep. You transform your subconscious more while you're sleeping because you have a really good evening and morning routine, where your evening routine is spent rather than scrolling and procrastinating sleep like most people, and then setting themselves up for low-level subconscious learning while they're asleep. You actually do what Thomas Edison said, which is never go to bed without a request to your subconscious. You go to bed, you review your day in your journal, maybe just take 5 minutes on this, and then you visualize your future self. You pray and you ask God to help you expand your vision, and ultimately you commit to who you're going to be the next day. And then you commit to sleep, and you get better and better at sleeping deeply and getting really deep transformational sleep where your brain really transforms, heals, grows, learns, and then you wake up. And rather than jumping straight into input mode where you're mindlessly consuming distractions, you get yourself into the right set and setting where you meditate, visualize, pray, tap into gratitude, which ultimately opens up so much happiness and also great ideas and inspiration. And then you journal. And rather than inputting, you output, and you tap into the subconscious breakthroughs that happened while you were asleep. And you give yourself the space to journal, to think, to reflect, and watch as your subconscious and God and just yourself, your future self, gives you the ideas, gives you the strategies, gives you the inspiration that you can then act on. And then you then start working on the important, not the urgent. You aggressively get yourself into a flow state and work on what's most important. And you design your life around what's most important rather than the urgent. What could happen in the next 12 months if you asked more of life, and if you went fully committed, if you went into monk mode, and if you really enjoyed it, and if you really spent more time in flow, focus flow, and recovery flow, where you're fully on and fully off? What could happen in the next 12 months? Could you achieve and experience and transform at least as much in the next 12 months as you did in the last 5 years? I'm talking about qualitative growth. Maybe you actually did a lot, but there's a difference between being busy and being productive. And being productive, it means you actually made tangible, important, transformational progress. You actually evolved. Maybe you let go of some story you held on to, some identity, some trauma of your past. Maybe you actually did some deep work and made some deep progress, some deep growth, some deep learning on your desired future self. I believe that if you review your progress, if you're humble about it, if you're open about it, yes, you've made massive progress. Yes, you've transformed. Yes, you've grown. But also, if you asked more of life, if you got hyper committed, if you got specific, if you committed more to the process and to flow and to being in monk mode and to playing your own game, not worrying about other people's games, not distracting yourself, not worried about what's so much going on in the outside world, 99% of which is irrelevant to you and your goals, and most of which is low level and which is actually muddling your future self, muddling your worldview, muddling what you think is possible, distracting you, destroying your motivation, destroying your momentum. You just went all in, went into monk mode, went into your game, went into flow, and enjoyed it, and just lived your life, embraced your focus, embraced your courage, and then embraced your beautiful life, what you already have, those around you, and deepened those. What could happen? How much growth, meaning, and experience could you have in the next 12 months? If you just set it up? Usually, and there's a great concept actually called forcing function, which is the idea that you can set the conditions for what you want to happen. Eben Pagan is a marketing expert, but he's also like a self-development guy. And one of the things it's a concept that he had that I love, and it connects with forcing functions. And it's basically what he calls inevitability thinking. And the concept is that he says that inevitability thinking is thinking and acting as if what you want is already yours because you set up the conditions for it to happen. So you set up the conditions for it to happen. This is like the idea that if you want to go on a trip, is all you have to do is buy the plane ticket, maybe book the hotel, and now you've set up the conditions for it to happen. Now you've already put it into place. You created a forcing function. You created a situation. Now you just need to go and make it real. Nothing happens until after you commit. So this is why you would commit to something. You sign up for the marathon, you sign up for the coach, right? You've set up the conditions for it to happen. Now you just go through the process. You've set the stage. So in what ways can you immediately set a big stage that now you need to grow into? Now you've created a forcing function, and now you just need to figure out how to make it real. You commit first, and once you're in a state of full commitment, then from there, you can find the pathway. Nothing happens until after you commit. Once you get committed, then providence moves too. Question number 3 is the difference between ego goals and spiritual goals. So how much of your life right now is striving for accolades, etc., trying to be better than other people, trying to prove yourself to other people, trying to be externally successful for one reason or another, which in the end, you won't truly value. So at your core, who is your highest and most powerful self, which you've been avoiding? So this is about asking you at your core, what do you ultimately want? What do you believe God wants for you? What do you believe is most important in your life that maybe you're avoiding, and you're going to get to that later? Aristotle had a concept for this. He called it final cause. And this is, what is the final cause? What is the thing that in the end you want, which all of the things you're doing right now maybe means is to that end, but they're not the ultimate end? What is the ultimate end from which you believe your life is worth, and what you believe would be the most valuable, worthwhile thing for you to focus on, for you to develop, or pursue or go after. And this is something that you both choose and you discover. But if you just listen to it, if you get to know yourself, this reminds me of Michelangelo. When Michelangelo was creating the David and he was talking to the Pope asked him, what is the secret behind your genius and how you created the David? And he just said, I took away everything that was not the David. I stripped away everything that was not. And so one of the key aspects is that being honest and looking at all the things that you're striving for in your life, all the things that you're committed to, all the things that you think you want, and then asking yourself, what do I truly want? What is the most important thing? What is the thing of most worth? What is the thing that in the end of my life, I want to have embraced and fully become and done? All right, last two questions. 80-20 thinking. How much of your day-to-day life is spent in the 80% that is ultimately a distraction or false security? So this is just an invitation to look at your life and say, from an 80-20 perspective, that 80% of what you're now doing is creating almost none of your results, but also 80% of your life reflects your past self, not your future self. Whereas the core 20% of your life, and this includes the activities you engage in, it includes the people that you're with, it includes your future self. What is the 20% of your life that if you went all in on and embrace that, this is what you most want? That 20% is more on the spiritual goals side. That's more who you ultimately want to be. It's your future self. It's also your core gifts, strengths. It's where your greatest excitement is, but also your greatest fear. And then the 80% of your life is busyness. It's other people's agendas, or it's just you doing something that worked in the past and you're doing it. It may even be your paycheck. Right. But it's you holding on to something that isn't ultimately going to create your future self. And if you stay in that 80%, you're going to be very distracted. Also, from an 80-20 perspective and a flow perspective, flow can only happen when you go deep on a few things. If you're constantly task switching, then you can't go into flow. And if you keep that 80%, that means that you're keeping lots of activities, behaviors, situations, people, pings and dings, notifications. You're keeping a lot of the things that are pulling you out of flow. You're constantly task switching, context switching. You're doing 1,000 things. Whereas to be highly successful, you want to strip away that 80% and focus on the few things which matter, the things that are truly essential. And you want to go 10x deeper and get 10x better at the few things which matter and evolve yourself in that 20% which matters. So how much of your day-to-day life is spent in the 80% that is ultimately a distraction or false security? These are things that got you here but won't get you there, or these are the things which you clearly know are a distraction from your desired future self. And what would your life look like? What could it look like if you went all in on the 20% that is absolutely most essential? It's absolutely your final cause. It's what you most want. And if you went all in on this, going 10 times bigger or 100 times would be easy. And if you went all in on that, and if you committed to that fully. Final question. What are you still holding on to? One of my favorite books that I recently read is a book called Already Free. And in this book, it's written by a family therapist, and he compares the difference between Buddhism and Western psychotherapy. And he ultimately creates a model where you can get the benefits of both, because in a lot of ways, Buddhism and Western thought are in a lot of ways opposites, but they're both very useful. But the main concept of Already Free is that you are already free. We always create these stories, these narratives in our mind about why we can't do what we want, or why, for example, your spouse, you come up with all the reasons in your head about why they're the problem in your life. And you realize that these are all just stories, and that you are always free right now. And you are already free right now. And you are actively, freely choosing the life you have, but you're also actively, freely choosing the narratives, the stories, the perspectives that you have. And you're doing those so that you can, in your mind, not be free. You're creating these narratives to give you an excuse to make you believe you're not free, and that these things are the reasons why you're not free, when in reality, you are fully free right now, and you are actively, freely choosing the stories, the narratives, and the perspectives. You're holding on to things as an excuse. And this is hard to actually embrace and to accept, but it is true. And as I've learned this, it's helped me look at my wife, my kids totally different, where I realize, like, I am fully free right now, and I'm freely choosing the life I have. This is what I'm committed to. And so what stories or ideas from your past are you continuing to commit to and play out in the present? This is a key, is that if you hold on to perspectives, narratives, stories from your past, then everything in your present is lived as if the past is still occurring. This is what happens when you haven't healed your trauma. Everything you do in the present is lived out as if that past is still occurring. And so everything you're doing is essentially a coping mechanism, as living as if that past is still happening, even though that past is not still happening. It's just you're forcing upon your present self the perspective that it is. Actually, one of my favorite books, it comes from the psychologist Brent Slife. The book is called Time and Psychological Explanation. And one of the things he talks about in that book is that our memories are always reconstructed in the present. And so basically, he says that it's more accurate to say that the present actually causes the meaning of the past than to say that the past causes the meaning of the present. What this means is that the present is dictating what you feel about the past. In every moment, you are always reconstructing the past from a certain perspective. This is why when culture changes, we look at the past differently, but it's more accurate to say that the present is causing the past than that the past is causing the present. And so you right now are holding on to a story, a narrative, a perspective. So what are you still holding on to? And it's leading you to believe you're not free, when the truth is you are free and you are actually freely choosing that perspective now. And what would happen if you let that go? Those are 5 brutally honest prompts. I invite you to look at those. I invite you to expand your vision of your future self, expand what you believe you can be, do, and have, to review your last 5 years, and to reflect on the highlights of those 5 years, where you were truly being your future self, the true transformation, the true peak experiences, the true progress you made. And then what would happen if you actually expanded your vision? Could you be, do, and have way more even in the next 12 months than you did in the last 5 years? I definitely believe you could, if you were committed, if you're serious, if you were joyful. So I hope you enjoy those prompts. Please like this video. Please give it a thumbs up so that other people can see it. Please subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you later. Have an amazing day.